Hey everybody, welcome to today's edition of Lisa's Leftovers. I hope everybody is getting ready for Thanksgiving. I know this is going to be a different year and I'm sure everybody's tired of thinking about it and talking about it, but we're going to make the best of it, which means we're going to do tons of baking and cooking and eating, and we can Zoom call with our friends and family and whatever. So I've got a cat who's just like restlessly walking around and pissing off our dog, so hopefully he'll settle down, but that's what lives are all about. So anyway, because I had to make pie crust anyway for Thanksgiving, I'm making a pecan pie and probably also an apple pie. I decided that I would show you my super easy pie crust recipe using ingredients that you, I'm sure, already have on hand. And it's so easy that you'll never buy another store-bought pie crust again. It's basically Martha Stewart's pie crust recipe. My father-in-law actually taught me to make it and had a little twist of his own that he added to it that I think makes it better. So, sorry, cat issues. So I'm gonna show you that. But like I said, it's super easy, and once I started making my own pie crust, I never decided to buy it again, crust again. And now the dog is running into the thing my phone is on. Excellent. Anyway, so let's get started. So I use a food processor. You can also use one of these, a pastry thing. I mean, food processors are just easy, so that's what I use. But feel free to do it by hand also. So I've got 2.5 cups of flour in my food processor. And to that, I'm going to add about a teaspoon of kosher salt, and then sugar. If you're making a fruit pie, you're going to want to add a little bit of sugar. If you're making like a pot pie or some kind of savory crust, then you can skip the sugar. But about a teaspoon of the sugar also. Linus, go to sleep. Take a nap, kitty. So I've got my salt and my sugar, and of course I forgot my butter. So the nice thing about this crust is that it's really versatile. Sometimes I add dried herbs to it. You can add thyme or rosemary. You can add like shredded cheese to it. So you can do all kinds of things. You could add cinnamon. You could add all kinds of things to make it a special crust for whatever it is you're making. You also need some fat in it, so either butter or Crisco. And you can use either or, a combination, which I love, because sometimes I don't have 2 sticks of butter, but I might have Crisco. So you need 2 sticks of butter. You can use equivalent 16 tablespoons of Crisco. You can use 1 stick of butter and half Crisco. Super versatile. So I'm gonna get that because of course I forgot it, and it's in the refrigerator. So the key to this crust is that everything is chilled. So you want your butter really cold. Sometimes I even put it in the freezer first. If you're going to use Crisco, you can put that in the freezer. But you want everything to be cold because it's going to make a nice flaky crust. I think if you use all Crisco, the crust comes out flakier. Whereas if you use some butter, it's going to maybe taste a little bit richer. My contacts, I can't read the questions, but I will try to read questions if I can. I also, I do like to cut the butter into chunks, but again, I didn't this time. But I'll just cut it into little chunks before I put it in the fridge. So I've got everything in there, and I'm just gonna put the top on, and I'm just gonna pulse it a little bit. You don't wanna overmix this stuff. So I just pulse it a few times to get rid of the real big lumps of butter. Since I have my butter in big pieces, it might take a little bit more. Then my father-in-law's secret ingredient was apple cider vinegar. He would put a capful, if he was using a regular bottle, a capful, which is about a teaspoon of apple cider vinegar into the crust. It makes it flakier. The apple cider vinegar will cook off and evaporate quicker, so it makes the crust have air pockets in it, and it also does something to the gluten. So his secret was apple cider vinegar. So my secret, which I promised to you, is vodka. So I just put a teaspoon or two of vodka into. I've learned not to measure it over your pie crust because once I went a little crazy with the vodka in the pie crust. So we've got just about 2 teaspoons, another few pulses, no barking. Then you're gonna add ice water, and you just have to be careful here because depending on the humidity in your air, depending on how much vodka you add, you're gonna add between 1/2 cup and 1/4 cup. So I'll usually add ice to my container and then maybe 1/2 cup of water, and I'm not gonna wanna use it all. So I just wanna pulse it as I'm pouring the water in. Careful here not to add too much water because it can get wet really fast. So as soon as it starts to hold together, if you press it between your fingers, so you can always open it up and take some out, and that's sticking together. So I'm just going to pulse it a little bit more until it starts to hold together into a ball. And that's good. That's your pie crust, all done. So I started at 3 o'clock, it's 3:07. I talked for a little bit. So we're talking maybe 4 minutes to make your pie crust. And like I said, it just is sticking together. You don't want it wet. You want it to stop it when it just is starting to form into a ball. So at this point, I'm just going to separate it into 2 pieces. This recipe makes enough for a double crust pie. So I'm going to dump it onto a piece of parchment and separate it roughly in half. Sometimes I'll keep a little bit more for the top crust if I'm doing a lattice or something like that, but roughly 2 even pieces. Wrap them in plastic, and then you just want to flatten it sort of into a disc because it's going to make it a lot easier to roll out if you refrigerate it like this. At this point, you can put it into the refrigerator at least 30 minutes. I like to do at least an hour to make sure that it's really well chilled, but you can refrigerate this crust for a couple days, and the best part is you can even put it in the freezer. So I might make 2 or 3 batches of crust the same day, and what I don't use I'll just put in the freezer, and then when I want to make a pie, I can just pull out my crust and my pie is practically done. So that's what you've got, 2 pie crusts. So I'm going to refrigerate those later, but I actually do have one that I had made earlier. So when you do have it refrigerated, you want to take it out 10 or 15 minutes before you're going to use it because it does get pretty stiff with the cold butter. And at this point, I'm just going to roll it out and put it into my pie plate. You can actually see in this, I don't know if you can see, but there are still chunks of butter. So you don't necessarily want all the butter to be completely smoothed out of it because those little pockets of butter make a really nice crust. This is bugging me. Well, my cutting board is not level and it's kind of bugging me. So it will be pretty stiff. I just took this out just before I started. So like about 10 minutes ago, and it's pretty stiff to roll it out. But it does make a nice, really nice pie crust. And since you rolled it, since you chilled it in a disc, it's gonna come out pretty round too, which is nice. And of course I don't have my pie plate out too. I don't know if anybody else seems or feels super disorganized this year, but I feel like Thanksgiving just came up so quick and I'm not really ready, even though we're not really doing a big deal this year. But I did want to show you, I do like to roll out my pie crust on a pastry cloth. Mine looks like it's been through wars. But if you do that, if you flour it a little bit and roll it out on your pastry cloth, then, I don't think I have a pie plate handy even. Once you have your crust rolled out, pretending this is rolled out, it's really easy to just fold it in half and then you can put it over your, it's hard to do without a pie plate, but anyway, you can just put it over your pie plate and it's a lot easier to get it onto your pie plate when you've got the parchment, good grief, I'm losing my mind, when you've got the pastry cloth underneath it. But I do like to, for this, this crust, I do like to use a marble cutting board because it stays cool, so the crust stays cool and it doesn't warm up much. So at this point, I would just roll it out thin enough, put it into my pie pan, and I am ready to make my pie. So again, for anybody who tuned in late, it's 2.5 cups of flour in your food processor, teaspoon of salt, teaspoon of sugar. You can skip the sugar if you're making a savory crust. Then 2 sticks of butter, or you can sub in an equal amount. It has the tablespoons on it, so you need 16 tablespoons. You can sub in Crisco. Flour's making me sneeze. And then 1/4 to 1/2 cup of ice water. And I used probably about 1/4 cup today. Depends on the humidity level in your air and how much vodka you put in. 1 to 2 teaspoons of vodka for a super flaky crust. Now let me see. I'm too far away, I can't even scroll down. This has not been my best video, I have to say, but I hope it encourages you to make your own pie crust. This one is going to become a pecan pie, which is super exciting, or pecan for you Southerners. I really wish I could see the questions. I'm just gonna come around and scroll down. Actually, I'll just take the phone off. Now I can read. So I did see a couple questions. Sorry for the close-up. Can't hear only Christmas music. No Christmas music yet, not till Thanksgiving is over. I could have sworn I saw questions. I'm definitely losing my mind here. Well, anyway, that is my homemade crust recipe, and never buy store-bought again. You can make pies, you can make pot pies. I just made hand pies the other day. You can make tarts, you can make muffins, you can make single crust or double crust pies, all from this same basic recipe. So anyway, homemade pie crust today on Lisa's Leftovers, and have a great Thanksgiving, everybody.